Good morning. Welcome to the Monday edition of the NBA Betting Show. With me, as always, in Bitcoin headquarters, there is Mike Lucky. In Bruce Bowen headquarters is Matt Meiselman. I'm here in front of the Steph Curry pick. I'm Mike G. Let's jump straight to a recap from yesterday. There was some games that were recommended if you were following the sheet. We didn't do a show on Sunday, but Matt still posts our model on his Twitter account, Preaching Sense. Matt, what were we thinking was going to happen in that Mavericks game? What happened? What did we learn?
Yeah, these are the two teams where we have probably the largest general disagreement with the market right now, and it would have been nice to get a victory here. Just quickly for today, though, we almost have a couple recommendations for today, so we're certainly going to get into that and break down, the ifs and thens and what we might do. There's a couple games that might be partial bets, but nothing that is super, super pressing. So we'll do the recap first. But yeah, we have the Clippers rated lower than the market in almost all of their games. And the Mavericks are now the opposite because Christian Wood rates negative in the 538 player ratings, and Josh Green is better than him. And I think that anyone who really knows basketball like really well would probably agree that Josh Green is good. And Dorian Finney-Smith is also back. Tim Hardaway Jr. is back. And it just seems like the market is reacting to Wood and not those guys. The Mavericks made us look really smart the other day when they beat the Heat at home when they were underdogs. They were 2.5-point underdogs at home for that game and won by 25. But in this one, yeah, they just played really poorly in the second half. So they were up at halftime and just ended up losing by a lot. I don't really. I start to get skeptical when we're separate from the market on the closing line in addition to the opening line. Sometimes the market opens in a place where it's confusing, but then over the day, the line shifts to where our numbers are, and then we have no more disagreement. In this case, it happened a little bit. The Mavericks were as low as like -1 or -1.5 and closed at like 2.5, but we were projecting a number in the fours. So we were a little bit off, but at least the line was trending toward us. They just played a bad game. So I don't think there's too much to read into this, but I am keeping an eye on the teams where we just are in the same direction of disagreement on them every single time. And these are really the two teams in opposite directions. So, yeah, bad result,
Clippers
but I
in
think we're
particular,
okay.
Clippers
Yeah.
in particular have really high futures odds, and they have for most of the season, despite playing quite poorly and not being able to get their stars on the court very much. This is one that, it reminds me of Brooklyn last year, where the market just had them as this contender the entire way, and they ended up losing early in the playoffs. I'm interested to see how this plays out because I'm
Yeah.
not a believer in this Clippers team, but the market is certainly, especially for futures, they're much higher than I am.
So I would caution anyone against using finals and conference odds to justify where the market thinks a team is. Like, it's more on a day-to-day basis that I'm referring to, because there's no incentive for any sports book to make the Clippers longer odds if people are going to bet them anyway at lower odds.
Sure.
And that was true of the Nets last year. People wanted to bet on Brooklyn. They wanted to bet on the Lakers, which is probably still true this year. Maybe not as much, but people want to bet on these teams. And the kinds of people who are betting the Clippers to win the championship this year, or were betting the Nets to win last year's championship, those people don't really care about the prices. They're just like, this is the team I think is going to win, and I'll just bet on them. And I think the market just doesn't have to raise the odds because they're getting enough action. So basically, the public is keeping this line low. And it's not an indication that the books think the Clippers are good. But day to day, we are a little bit off. So I think what you're saying sort of aligns, but then there's this other element that is part of that too.
So is it what's Kawhi's player rating and what's Paul George's
I
player
mean,
rating?
they're both rated in the top 10 in the NBA.
Okay.
So George is a 5.8, which puts him, I think, fifth. And then Kawhi's a 4.6, which I think puts him about eighth or ninth.
Got
So
it.
they're rated really, and that sounds reasonable, right? Like that's what,
Sure.
if anything, George is probably being rated too well. If I think
Yeah,
that's
I
what
mean,
most
if
people would
anything,
argue.
that's too high to me.
The reason that the team rates poorly, according to us, is Zubac and Reggie Jackson and Marcus Morris and Norman Powell and Luke Kennard are all rated negative.
Mm-hmm.
But like, they're not actually good. Like if you look at dunksandthrees.com, which is what we did earlier, I think we did it a couple weeks ago, they all have negative EPMs for the season. And they weren't so great last year. I think Zubac was playing a little better last year, but they've said, like Ty Lue has said, we're overworking him. Like he's tired. The thing that does make the Clippers better, and I wonder if they'll start doing this, is Zubac gets in foul trouble, and that kind of happened in this game. And then Robert Covington plays small ball 5, and he's good, actually. He's had a terrible year so far, but because of that, they weren't playing him, so he's actually well rested at this point in the season, and he's usually good. So maybe he's starting to play a little bit better, and if Covington were the team's starting center, we would rate them quite a bit better. It would be like a 2-point swing. So there's some fragility in these Clippers numbers, depending on their rotations.
No, I'm just trying to think of what is it that we're off from the market? It's the non-Kawhi, non-PG players just rate so poorly for 538. That's why the overall
taking the whole team rating down.
Yeah, and also the Clippers are going to be a better team in the playoffs than they are now. George and Leonard,
those guys are going to play more minutes.
They're going to play more minutes. Yeah. George and Leonard playing 40 minutes compared to the 33 that they're playing now or whatever it is probably going to add like 3 points to the team rating. But they're not giving those guys those minutes right now. Maybe later in the regular season, if they're desperate and trying to get in the playoffs, like they're in the play-in tournament, they will play them more in those games. And that's part of my hesitance to bet them to miss the playoffs outright compared to just when we were talking about this, I thought betting them to make the play-in tournament was good because I don't think they're a good enough team to be in the top 6. But if they were in the play-in, they would be the best team in the play-in.
Right.
Almost certainly.
Even if they're the 9, they might be the best team in the play-in.
Yeah, I think the only way they wouldn't be is if they're playing like Phoenix or Golden State. But they're not much worse than those teams, if at all. So I don't think the Clippers will miss the playoffs outright, but I do think they're below the top 6. So, yeah, it's just day-to-day we're going to have to, this is why the player rating model works is the rotations will create the rating for us. Like when Terrence Mann got moved into the starting lineup for Reggie Jackson, we're rating the team better immediately. Like we don't have to wait and see how they perform there. Mann is a better player. And when John Wall got injured, the rating went up even more. But we have Dallas rated really, really well right now. This isn't as much about the Clippers. It's more about the Mavericks because Josh Green is a +1 player rating. I posted yesterday he had this like crazy step back 3, which is not even like the thing he's known for. He's a guy who can just catch and shoot when he's wide open, and he like makes good back cuts and he plays really good defense. And if he's making dribble drive moves, like, this is a potential all-star if he's able to do that. I don't know. That might have just been a total.
That Norman Powell fall.
Yeah.
That was not it. That wasn't even really a Josh Green. I felt like he just tripped over his feet. I thought there was way too much of that going around Twitter for victory laps.
It was fun because we also have been bashing Norman Powell, so it was like both.
Fair.
That was more about Norman Powell being bad. I agree. He's not a defensive player by any stretch. So, but yeah, Josh Green is better than Christian Wood. Like I can say that confidently, I think. So that swap benefits us, and Dallas looked really good against Miami, but just not in this game. So I think there's nothing really to change going forward here. I was already giving Dallas a negative manual adjustment for this game, and I was already giving the Clippers a positive one. And despite that, we were still showing an edge. So yeah, like I'm not going to change it by that much more. I think that's enough for that game.
I don't think there's anything else to say there.
All right.
Okay.
All right, let's move on. Knicks futures bets took a little hit last night.
Yeah, I think we should be hedging these, by the way.
The Knicks?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the Knicks are very, very likely to be in the play-in tournament now. Because Miami...
Mitchell Robinson is a big deal. We've talked about this.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, the loss against Atlanta coupled with this one here doesn't bode well for them getting the 6-seed or better. So
just quickly on yesterday's game, there would have been value on Toronto if you got them at Pick'em or at +1 because we got two things happen. We got a Van Vliet upgrade. Anunoby was ruled out, but Van Vliet is way more important. So we got him upgraded, and then we got Quickly ruled out. Quickly was like a late downgrade for this game. So for me, it was like a partial unit at Pick'em or whatever. We had it projected like -2.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is Fred VanVleet a top 15 player, or is his backups just that bad?
He's borderline there, and his backups are okay. Like there's truth to both of what you said.
In my head, he's one of the guys that moves the spread almost as much as anybody in our model, and
He's rated really well. He's a 4.0. And he was having a terrible season, but the ratings are not just going to move to how he's been so far because he was so good last year and his career track record is really good. So the ratings are standing pat on Fred VanVleet, and I think they are being validated to some degree. Like we lost that Toronto-Milwaukee game, but VanVleet almost had a 40-point triple-double. Like that wasn't his fault.
Yeah, he's impressive is my only point.
Yeah. Yeah, so he moves the line like 3.5 points. What I've actually been doing is VanVleet he's 3.9, which would make him about a 4-point impact because his backups are below average. He is a -1 player adjustment. Like the manual adjustment against Toronto every game is directly for him because I don't think he's 100%. And so he's worth like 3 to the spread in our model because it would be 4, but I have him worth 3 because I'm taking a point away every single time. Yesterday, though, was different. I didn't do that because VanVleet was the only player on the Raptors yesterday who was not on a back-to-back. He sat the front end. So he was more well-rested than everyone else on his team. So in that context, there's a lot of that going on. If anyone wants to ask me about that on Twitter or whatever, there's a lot of that going on and we'll talk about that with Damian Lillard today. There's a lot of that happening where the player ratings are different depending on the fatigue of the specific player in question. So it was a well-rested VanVleet yesterday, basically, because he sat the prior game that was the Boston game they lost at home. But for the Knicks playoff stuff, I just looked it up. They're like plus 115 to miss the playoffs on BetRivers. I do think the Knicks are most likely going to be the 7 or 8 seed, but there is a chance now that they're going to be the 9 or 10. And 538 has them 56% to get in. So that is like exactly a fair line if you go by that. But as someone with like a 2-unit bet on them to make the playoffs already, like hedging off of that for a little makes sense. So I'm not saying bet the Knicks to make the playoffs if you have nothing, but we spent a lot of time saying bet the Knicks at plus 150, plus 120, even money to get in. Now you can get plus money the other way. I think hedging it down a little bit makes sense.
Just a reminder, largely this is because of Mitchell Robinson, right?
Yeah.
He's going to be out for a little while. He has a massive impact on this team rating. And
yeah, Jericho Sims rates pretty poorly. Yeah.
So, it may be a 3-week rough stretch where, maybe they play, X and 2X in their win-loss record. But, if Robinson comes back, hopefully they can get it back together.
I would say it's equal parts 3 different things. One of them is what you just said with Robinson. The other one is the Knicks just lost to Atlanta and Toronto, which are relevant teams for them. And then the last one is Miami has gotten healthy, and Miami is on a winning streak now. And the Heat are ahead of the Knicks by a game in the standings. They're probably a better team than the Knicks. There was a while there where like Bam was hurt, Hero was hurt, Lowry was hurt. The Heat were losing, and the Knicks were ahead of them, and it projected to finish ahead of them. I don't think the Knicks are likely to finish the season ahead of the Heat anymore. So that means that the Celtics, Sixers, Nets, Bucks, Cavs, and Heat, I just did 5. It's 6 teams. Those are 6 teams, are the likely top 6 in the Eastern Conference, which means the Knicks are probably going to be in the play-in tournament. And the odds reflect that too.
The Knicks to make the play-in
it's
tournament
it's like minus 300.
Oh, well.
Yeah, they are like priced for that. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if you find a line short of minus 200 for the Knicks to make the play-in tournament, I'm certainly interested in that, but I don't think there are any.
Understood.
I'll just check BetRivers here because that's what I have open. Minus 278 is what the Knicks are for the play-in.
I've got a general question about the playoff and play-in game bets.
Yeah.
This being 2.5 weeks away from the trade deadline, where so much can change, does it really make sense to be making bets now when some of these teams may look drastically different? Like Toronto could go from on the cusp of play-in to playing down to try to get into the bottom 4. The Knicks will probably make a move. The Lakers will probably make a move. So are these odds even relevant now, given how different some of these teams might be in a couple weeks?
I think it's very dependent on what team we're talking about, because I don't think the Knicks can really change their roster. Like, they don't have the assets, and they aren't going to get rid of the players that they would. Like, they're not. Could they trade Emmanuel quickly? I just don't know why they would do that. Like, I just don't. I think that team is super unlikely to change fundamentally. Like there might be a tweak. They might trade Cam Reddish and a draft pick and get like another eighth man. But I don't think there are a few teams where I just don't see how they can change by that much. So if we were looking at, let's say, a Raptors to make the playoff bet, that would be very concerning. Like I agree there. For that team, you have to wait. The other one, I mean, I think the Heat and the Hawks are pretty set where they are. And if the Hawks do make a move, it's not likely to be a move where they get that much better or that much worse. Right there, if they trade John Collins for Jared Vanderbilt and Malik Beasley, it doesn't really change the quality of the team by that much. So there are a lot of teams like that. I think specifically in the Eastern Conference, we're really talking about Indiana and Toronto getting worse. And that's really it. Like, I don't think Orlando, Charlotte, and Detroit are not going to be relevant. Washington and Chicago, I think, are staying where they are. The Knicks are probably staying where they are, the Hawks and the Heat, and then the other teams are all above the play-in anyway. So it's really Indiana and Toronto. But
I think the Bulls could easily blow it up.
I don't know. I mean, the Bulls are currently in the play-in right now. Like they're there. I don't know why. I think the rumors about that have some merit, but I don't think that's likely. I just don't know why they would do that.
I think the key is actually responding to these trades, right? Like,
yeah, well, we'll do that too for sure.
I'll throw one out there actually involving the Knicks and the Bulls. There's rumors about Zach LaVine going to the Knicks for some combination of Quickly, Reddish, maybe even RJ Barrett and pick.
That would be so horrible for the Knicks. I mean,
like I said, I'm not saying I believe it. I'm just saying there's enough. Like nothing would surprise. Like the Bulls, what are they actually doing? Yeah, they're 10th. Okay, great. This roster with their most expensive guy is barely making the play-in.
Yeah.
So you could argue they should be blowing it up. Again, I'm not saying what they should or shouldn't do.
Right.
I just feel like there's so much that can change. Even if I think the Knicks are a potential trade candidate, but even with just the moving pieces around them. So I'm with you. I have Knicks futures bets. I am thinking about the hedging you're just saying, but there's also part of me that's just saying it might be better to wait.
I think that there's merit to both sides of that because we have to be. I'm trying to be context dependent on this. I think what you're saying is really good evidence for why the Knicks are very, very, very unlikely to finish 11 seed or worse. The teams below them are likely to go down, but the teams above them are not going to have that happen. Like the Knicks are extremely likely to wind up between the 7 and the 10 right now. And probably to your point, more likely 7 or 8. I still think they're north of 50% to make the playoffs, but they're not as likely to get in as they were when we were talking about them last month. So it's just a hedge is why I'm bringing that up.
Understood. Yeah. Okay.
Because I don't think they'll be plus money to miss the playoffs for that much longer if they keep losing.
All right. Well, any more talk of the Knicks, we're going to have to subtitle.
All right, we'll keep going.
New York Knicks. So let's move on. What else we got?
Yesterday, finally, Jokic sat and the team actually lost. I hope that people were able to time this one. I didn't have a huge bet here because the market was pricing in Jokic closer to out than to in.
Still confuses me. And I ended up I got 4.5 on OKC. The line moved to 0.5 point as the news came in on me. But I just felt like, how did this line not go to 2 at least? It's just a little bit confusing to me as to how much the market rates Jokic.
Well, we had it projected 2.3 only with him out. So that was our fair line. And the line closed at 3. So we were not far off from the market. We had a 0.7 point difference from the closing line.
Fair. I didn't see the closing line.
Yeah, it happened again where Jokic got ruled out. The line only moved a little bit, and then it gradually moved more. And that's why I've been insistent on bringing this topic up because this happens with him every time. Like the original shift for Jokic is insufficient because, well, honestly, if we had the rotation correct yesterday, we may not have even bet on this game because DeAndre Jordan, I'm pretty sure, didn't play.
Yeah, no, I was going to bring that up. And it went to Najee, right?
Yeah, Najee started. DeAndre was a DNP coach's decision in a game where Jokic was inactive.
Yeah.
So that was weird. So yeah, if I had known that DeAndre wasn't going to play, which I don't think we could have known, but if we had known that, we might have only been projecting to get the line at like 3.5, which is right where it closed basically.
Who else got center minutes? Najee only got 27.
They played small because the Thunder play small. So
Gotcha.
Najee was in when Mike Muscala was in for OKC, but then they'll play like Jalen Williams at center or Kenrich Williams at center. And then Denver's playing like Aaron Gordon at center.
Okay, that's the only guy I could think of because
Yeah.
he got 38 minutes, and there's nobody else with any sort of height. I mean, Jeff Green. I forget.
Well,
what position
Jeff
he
Green and
plays.
Vlatko Chanchar can play some center. Not but they can play there.
The Vlatko only having 9 minutes and Zeke Najee having 27. That was the part that confused me.
I
That
guess
that leaves
Najee.
about 12 minutes of center open.
It probably wasn't Gordon. It was Najee, Chanchar, and Green split the center minutes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. They've had a couple lineups where it was two of those on the court, but yeah, those were the
I
centers.
actually could look this up. I don't
So,
know.
Matt, when you were saying you're hoping folks timed it well, what was, if you could have timed this perfect, what was the right time to bet it, and what was the line to bet if all things were falling into place for if you were hovering?
The moment Jokic got ruled out, the market was mostly at 5.5. And that was also around the highest line that existed. I think it opened 6 overnight. I didn't bet it overnight because there was too much uncertainty. At the moment Jokic got ruled out for the game, the line was plus 5.5 for OKC. So it was like a 1.5 unit bet for me at that number. I had already bet a little bit on Denver earlier because I thought Jokic was trending towards probable, but I cashed those out and bet the other way.
Gotcha. Okay, so the best you could have done if all things were perfect, you got the news right away, you got right to the bet, was to get an OKC plus 5.5 or plus 5.
Yeah,
Okay.
And Denver team total under would have also been good. Like we haven't talked about this a lot, but Jokic also has more of an effect on Denver's scoring than he does on Denver's defense. Like his defensive rating is a little weird because he's below average at defense, but he's so good at defensive rebounding that the combination of that does shift him towards positive because he's an unbelievable defensive rebounder. And that is part of defense, that they don't give up second chance points. So in terms of guarding skill, he's negative, but his rebounding is a big deal, especially when his backup is, someone who can't rebound like Jeff Green or something. So yeah, the Denver team total under would have been another bet. I had like a little bit on that. But yeah, you basically if you were just waiting for the announcement and you had like one sports book with a Denver bet open, ready to go, and one sports book with an OKC bet ready to go, and then you get the update whether he's in or out, you just bet the one where it aligns. And the Denver bet would have been much bigger because we were projecting it like 10 if he was in.
Yeah.
And 2.5 if he was out, or 2 if he was out, or something like that. So there was going to be more edge towards Denver if he played than there was towards OKC if he didn't play. It was a bit of a quirky one because Michael Porter Jr. had already been ruled out. And then we also had Jamal Murray questionable. We also had Bones Highland. We also had Vlatko Chanchar. And if Chanchar didn't play, DeAndre would have had to play because Jokic was out too. So there were a lot of moving pieces. These are hard to handle, but I think the key here is if you have a player as important as Jokic, if you're just directionally accurate on him, if you overbet, that's okay because it's going to move enough at least by the start of the game where you can hedge the other way. Like he is important enough where if you just get something in that direction, you don't have to be too careful about how much you bet because you can just hedge it back the other way.
Got it. And I'm sorry, where did that game close?
It closed at 3. And if we knew DeAndre was going to not play, we probably would have projected it at 3. Him projected for like 16 minutes, it was 2.3 was our projection. So it was like a 1 unit bet, really. I had bet a little bit more and then I like hedged a little bit back after. But yeah, it was like if you see Jokic get ruled out, the market has it priced into a degree, but not all the way. So it's going to be a bet anyway. And that's why we have the spreadsheet because it illustrates like what the specific numbers are. So on the sheet, we were showing a projected line of, let's call it 11 with Jokic estimated worth 9 points. So it moved to 2. And these are always going to be approximations, especially in a case where multiple players on the team are in doubt at the same time. I can't lay out every single combination of potential. And it wouldn't be useful enough because Jokic is so much more important than all those other guys that you just want to react to him. To react to Bones Highland and his 0.5 point impact would just be silly when you have a player with a 9 point impact who's also maybe not playing. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that clears things up. I'm sure people are just, like they get confused by these because these are tough. Like these are hard situations. But just to go back to the point quickly of how the market will like not have a binary shift and it'll be more of a gradual shift. There are certain players where their impact is so large that the books are just not prepared to move the line that far for them. Like they don't realize how important they are. But then after the line settles, people will keep betting it down to the efficient number, and then it'll trickle more. Like in this case, it took like 20 more minutes for the line to settle where I thought it should settle.
Got it. Okay. All right, let's move on to the Suns Grizzlies 25-point blow. No, it wasn't a 25-point blowout. It ended up being a 2-point game in a very weird second half. But let's talk about that game. Whatever. Did we have a recommendation?
No,
on that,
there were no bets here. This is the one that matters a lot for futures.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll flag this and come back to it.
That's okay. But I mean, if it's relevant to talk, I mean, it's a lot happening in the West, and particularly in the Pacific Division. So we can talk futures if you want.
All right, let's just do that. Let's do that now.
Yeah, I think it's time.
All right, Pacific Division right here. Can we see this? Yeah. Okay. So part of the reason that we've mentioned the Suns as a division bet is because over the past 2 months we have recommended betting on every single other team. Not really Sacramento, although we've kind of mentioned them as like get them to when they were 6-1 as like a hedge because we had already given out Lakers, Clippers, and Warriors.
I couldn't do it, man. I just couldn't do it.
Okay,
I just was not a believer in this team. I still am not. They're 26-19, the third in the West. They're doing it, obviously.
They are not the third best team in the West, but they have already built themselves such a lead just by the sheer fact of not getting injured.
Yeah.
That it's going to be a little hard for them to fall back that far. They're at full strength. They are the worst team in this division. If every team is fully healthy, because the Lakers are going to look a lot better when Anthony Davis and Austin Reeves are playing. So, yeah, and I am including Reeves there. Davis is obviously the more important of the team. I know we like Austin Reeves, but
that's one of my favorite 5-second clips of our show up to date is. Lakers will be much stronger when Anthony Davis and Austin Reeves come
also
back.
Austin Reeves. Don't forget Austin Reeves.
Shout out Mama Reeves. I'm sure you're happy to hear it.
Yep, he's great.
All right. So are you recommending Suns at this point, or are you just recommending Suns as part of the giant portfolio of Pacific?
No. I think the Suns are legitimately plus EV right now. I tweeted last night that I think the Suns should be the favorites in the division. And that was before they almost blew the game against Memphis. I tweeted it when they were up 27 in the third quarter. So I might have had to backtrack a bit if they had actually lost the game. I was just assuming the game was over, which I think most of the time is a fair assumption with a 27-point lead. But we saw two teams blow that yesterday. One was Phoenix, who almost lost. The other one we'll get to was Portland, who actually lost the game with the 27-point lead. But Phoenix, okay, let me pull up 538 here. This is going to be hard because 538 is guessing on injury timelines. So I don't want to have too many tabs open. I'm just going to tell you guys where they have Booker's return scheduled for. They basically are projecting the team to be full strength the first week in February. That's roughly what we're looking at.
Is that 65% chance for the Kings to make the playoffs?
Yeah.
That seems crazy. I hope it's true. I hope that
it's only you're saying that it's not higher.
I mean, when you're 26-19 at this halfway through the season, like you don't have to have that crazy of a stretch.
Well, if they finish 7th or 8th, which is probably the most likely scenario for them, they're going to be playing like the Clippers and the Wolves, like with Towns back. They're going to be playing teams better than them in the play-in tournament. So that's why it's not higher, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, the Suns' projected rotation on 538 is like trying to account for the injuries. It's not doing it well. So I think like the error bars for this 44 wins projection, it probably is like 3 wins on each side. But Cameron Johnson is back. Chris Paul is back. They are likely to make a trade, more so than any other team, because the Suns have a player with a 1.1 player rating on their team who is going to be coveted around the league and who is played 0 minutes for them because he doesn't want to in Jay Crowder.
So what's 538 doing in terms of evaluating that? Are they considering that 1.1 player on the team? Have they taken that out of the rotation?
He's out of the projected rotation. And then
All
for
right,
all of the guys who are on injury timelines, they basically just have them projected for lower minutes because like Booker's projected 27 minutes per game right now. That's essentially his average over the remainder.
Is that 27 for the rest of the season supposed to make up for 0 for a little while and then
exactly
schedule?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it's
so
a perfect.
Taking
this is
estimated minutes remaining for the season and just kind of extrapolating it weirdly.
Yep. Yeah. So I think that's what they're attempting to do. It's a little bit of a weird way to do it, which is
that is a weird way to do it. But I guess I can't think of a better way.
Yeah, I don't have one either. But
fair.
The Suns may have a higher ceiling than even what's shown here because if Booker is back a week from now, the team rates way better than what they currently are. And then if all they have to do with Crowder is trade him for an equal player, talent-wise. Like, let's say they trade Jay Crowder for Alec Burks or something. Who is actually better, but whatever. I'll just call them even for now.
It would just be the guys that we like, right? It's like Alec Burks. It's like,
yeah, they're not going to trade for Bojan Bogdanovic, who we hate. They're going to trade for a player we like. Yeah, they're definitely. So they could get a player we don't like.
Quickly.
I think Bogdanovic would actually be pretty good for them fit-wise, just to have another shooter around Paul and Booker.
Yeah, I think they need more offense there, personally.
Yeah, but Cameron Johnson is back, and he can do a lot of that himself. Like, the Suns do have a really good team. The biggest issue with Phoenix is DeAndre Ayton, because I do think Booker will be back soon, but the reason that we don't like Ayton is because 538 doesn't like Ayton, and obviously the 538 standings projections are going to incorporate his player rating. So despite Ayton, like, they have to be the lowest on Ayton of anybody,
right,
by far. And despite that, they're still projecting them with the most wins in this division. So I think it just speaks to how good Booker is and how good the team might be with him, Cameron Johnson, Cameron Payne, who should be back soon.
We had a little bit of Twitter chatter about Ayton this weekend. And, you know, the conversation was basically like, Jock Landale and Bismack Biyombo are certainly worse players, in my opinion.
I don't think Landale is, but Biyombo is. Biyombo definitely is.
And it's just, it's interesting because we have Ayton rated extremely low, but I don't know if the market does. Like, what if they trade Ayton and Jay Crowder?
That would be incredible. That would be the best thing they could do, but I don't think they'll do that. If they traded Ayton and Crowder for, let's call it, I don't know,
a big man.
Yeah, Miles Turner.
Sure,
pick him. That would just be outrageous. Like, they might be the best team in the NBA if they make that move.
It's probably a trade that's available, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, they would have to rate Ayton the same way that we would to view that as a win.
Right. They probably won't do it. They probably don't agree with that because Ayton was good. More, he has been good in the past.
Maybe Ayton's trade value is worth more, is my point.
Yeah, it could be. But anyway, even if this team doesn't change, at full strength, which might only be a week or two from now, they will rate better for us than the rest of the teams in the division. And standings-wise, they are a decent amount back of Sacramento, but they're now on a 3-game winning streak. They're only a few games back. And they are ahead of the Warriors. I'm pretty sure, also ahead of the Clippers, right? Clippers are a game under 500? Or game over. They're a half game back of the Clippers. The Lakers, for their 2 impressive wins they just had, are still 3 games under 500. So the Suns are ahead of them. They're not far back of Sacramento.
Can you flip to the standings for a second? I want to look at the Western Conference standings.
Oh, just the actual standings?
Yeah. And while you're pulling up, I'll bring up the point that I want to talk about. You said that the most likely scenario for the Kings was playing.
Yeah.
So seventh seed. So look how many teams have to pass them for them to fall from where they are to 7th. I just want to make sure that that's still what we really think.
I think to be clear, I think it's below 50%, but it's more likely than not because there is a chance they could wind up missing the whole thing. Like they're 4 games ahead of 11 right now. It is teams, but it's not that many games.
Understood. I know some teams will get better, but it seems like a lot of teams. I'm not on.
It's just the margins are so small, and they're the worst of all these teams when everyone's healthy. Like
That's the caveat, though. Staying healthy is not a guarantee.
well, but a lot of these teams had
Yeah.
injuries and are almost back to normal. The Kings also have enormous downside
Right.
if
And
anything.
what's the likelihood of Anthony Davis getting hurt again? Really?
Sure,
right?
but if
What's
anything
the
happens,
likelihood of Chris Paul getting hurt again? I mean, I understand these guys are currently on timetables to come back, or in Paul's case, he's back. I don't know. This is a tough one, and this is my hesitancy or skepticism. So a little healthy skepticism about betting futures when there's so much changing, both
Yeah.
on the injury and the on the potential trade front. But anyway, I wanted to make sure we're looking at the standings.
yeah. Well, the other thing with the Kings is if Sabonis were to have an injury, they are terrible. Like they will this the Kings are rated worse than the Thunder if you take Sabonis off the team. Like as a team rated.
No, I understand
Yeah.
the potential injury for any team, for most teams, if they lose their best player,
Right.
it tanks them.
And Sabonis is already hurt. He has a fractured thumb, so that's why I'm mentioning it. It's not just like, hey, anyone could get hurt.
No, I'm with you. I think shockingly, and again, because I think we raced to make a Kings to miss the playoff bet when we
Yeah.
heard fractured thumb. I know I did.
Yeah, unfortunately it was fine, but yeah.
Right. I mean, he at least for that injury, he seems to have found a way to play through it.
Yeah, for
So,
sure. Well, to be clear on the division, though, you don't have to agree that the Suns deserve to be ahead of Sacramento to think it's a plus EV bet because the Suns odds.
If the value's there, or actually, if you're getting the right price, I'm with you. And,
So,
I'm sorry,
At plus 340, I'm very interested in this.
Bet Rivers had 4-1 last night. They went down to 3-1. I think line shopping here. I don't want to go through every book right now, but
Yeah.
every site is above 300 right now. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So, like, if I had to give the probabilities of who wins the division, you might disagree 5 or 10% on a certain team, but I think I would put Phoenix at 25 to 30, and then I'd put Sacramento at like 20 to 25, Golden State at 20 to 25, the Clippers like 15, and the Lakers like 5%. Does that math? I think that adds up.
It's pretty close if it's not right.
Yeah, that gives it like 95 to 105% total. Yeah. So I think Golden State, Sacramento, and Phoenix are all between 20 and 30%, with the Clippers a little bit lower, and then the Lakers do have a chance, but I think they're pretty far out. The home loss the Lakers had to the Kings the other night was pretty bad for their playoff chances.
Right.
So, yeah, I think even if you say Phoenix, Golden State, and Sacramento, there's so much uncertainty. We want to just say they're all even with each other. That makes Golden State and Sacramento negative EV bets right now, and it makes Phoenix plus EV because the odds are so different. So that's really, yeah. I do think Phoenix should be ahead, but even if you don't, at 3.5 to 1, it's still a good bet.
Right.
And especially if you've already bet on the other teams. That's the other key here. If you've already bet Golden State, you've already bet Sacramento, you've already bet the Clippers, you've already, like, just have the Suns now. If you have every other team besides Phoenix, definitely take Phoenix. I think we were even saying that last week.
Yeah, let's say there's somebody that's watching our show for the first time,
right?
Has no futures bets on this division. Would you recommend they bet Suns right now?
Yeah, I would just go smaller than I would do it if I were hedging. If I were hedging, I'd want to bet more to hedge the other stuff, but just on its own merits, I think it's a plus EV bet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump back to yesterday's box score, see if there's any other games we want to talk about, and then we should be going into today to look at some of the what ifs.
Yep. Let me go back to this Lakers-Blazers game. I don't understand how this game happened the way that it did. So we'll spend 5 minutes here, and then we'll give the overview of. It may not even take 5 minutes because this is just too hard to even comprehend. Okay. We had a bet on Portland -5 yesterday. Basically, we do disagree with the market in general on the Lakers, and we also have the Blazers being a little bit undervalued in games where available. So we had this projected at 8.4. The Lakers were winning this game 18-4 in the first quarter. And then the Blazers went on let me get these numbers right, 67-35 run. Yeah, something like that. Give or take a point, but I think that was the number.
All right. I got popcorn machine up here. Let me see what we got. So there was a 13-0 run for the Lakers in the first quarter, followed by a 20-8 run by the Blazers. the Blazers also had a second quarter 29-6 run.
Those are separate from each other, right? Yeah.
Yes. The
Yeah,
Lakers
so-
followed up the third quarter with a 21-3 run and a 6-0 run, and then had similar things in the fourth quarter.
The Lakers outscored the Blazers by 34 points in the second half after trailing by 25 at halftime. I've never seen that before.
Brilliant.
Yeah. Insane.
You mean our model didn't predict this?
It did not predict this. Then if it was a 9-point margin the other way, that would have looked perfect. But
This line graph is pretty sweet, actually. I'm gonna post this in our
All right.
strategy chat. It's a neat one.
so
Average lead was only 3.23.
that's well, yeah, I guess it just went really far both ways. But yeah, Thomas Bryant was amazing in this game. He's rated negative 2.6. This is going to sound stupid a lot of the time, but Thomas Bryant can't defend. He might be the worst defensive center in the NBA. He has offensive talent. It's very inconsistent, but at times he does look really good. But his percentile rating for defense on dunksandthrees.com is second percentile. And he's been a poor defender his whole career, but he had a really good offensive game, and I guess that just happens sometimes. So Portland is in a weird spot, and in terms of bets that we've predicted or that we've called out in the past, Portland missing the playoffs might be our best thing. They were plus 170. It was like the first week we were on the show. They're like minus 300 to miss the playoffs right now. And I don't know that the Blazers are going to blow it up this year. Probably not, but they are in Raptors territory, I think, where they're at least thinking about it. I think they're in the exact same position as Toronto. So if Portland were
I feel like the current team is a team of just blown up guys.
kind of, I mean, Dame is really, really good, but the rest of it is like weird role players. Nurkic is really good too, but like Jeremy Grant is just an average role player, even though he's like Christian Wood. He's a high usage but average role player. Josh Hart's pretty good. I mean, the Blazers do have a really good starting lineup, but they have no bench besides Peyton. And Peyton is so injury prone, they just can't give him minutes. I think that's really what this comes down to. They can't, like this team, if they had no injury concerns, would start Gary Payton and have Anthony Simons be the sixth man. But Peyton is just not capable of playing those minutes. He's just, he gets hurt too easily. Yeah. He's a really good player. He's like arguably the best defensive guard in the league, but he just can't stay on the court. Justice Winslow coming back will help them too, but they're falling far enough in the standings. I think they're in 12th place right now, where they may make a move. So even at minus 300, if they traded Dame, that's a bet. Like they're done if they trade him.
Yeah, I mean, if they trade him, it's because they're saying we're just going to retool.
Right. They probably would trade more than just him if they were trading him, right?
Yeah. No, if that's the route they go, I'm going to regurgitate something I heard on Simmons' podcast yesterday, but I think it's relevant. If Dame's earned the right there they're probably going to see what he wants to do. Like
right.
If they trade Dame and it's contentious, like not that Portland's getting free agents going there anyway, but who's going to play in Portland after they ship Dame out against his will?
Right.
If he agrees to it or says, "Hey, that's what I want to do," then yeah, they're going to say
He's been a weird guy when it comes to trade talks.
Yeah, but I'm they're going to look at it and say, all right, let's give time to Shaden Sharp, let's give time to Simons, and let's see what we got.
Yep.
They have a decision to make about Jeremy Grant. Like, how much money do you want to give that guy who, like you said, is a solid role player? So, you don't want to get caught in a bind there. But no, that team is a prime candidate. If Dame says, hey, you know what, as much as I've always said, I want to stay here every year, every time it comes up, he doubles down about wanting to be a Blazer for life. Maybe he does say, you know what, the timetable is just so different there. They have the young guys and then him. So by the time some of those young guys get minutes, Dame's 35. And then
Right.
what do you do? So it's just another reason why this year's trade deadline or the week before is going to be fascinating, I think, for some of these teams that are right on the cusp going down or trying to do something to at least get in the play-in.
So I do want to use this to segue to today, but for sure, and we will be doing a ton of stuff around the trade deadline, like analyzing how to be ready for certain moves, or just reacting to moves in real time. But for today, we actually do care about Damian Lillard a lot. So I think we should just go to today now before.
Yep.
Yeah, we got enough time for that. All right.
Yeah.
So the Blazers look like a bet right now. This line opened at 9 and is down to 8, and there's at least, I don't know if there were actually any 7.5s, but it's dropped by a point. And I think the speculation of guys being out tonight is a big part of it. So the Blazers are on the second leg of a back-to-back. It is another home game, but given the trajectory of the season, one, I
Can you
think.
move the value sheet up, please?
Oh yeah, can we not?
Oh, no, it's in there.
You got it?
I
Okay.
didn't see it. No, I'm sorry.
One, I think this is an indication of where the team is at psychologically. If they rest him tonight, it's a pretty strong tell that they are like they're more likely to trade away things at the deadline because they need wins right now. So
Mhm.
Dame not playing tonight would be a pretty strong tell. And then I just think you could do it in the reverse too, where we already have that tell that things are murky there, and maybe it does make Lillard more likely to sit. So I've Lillard here, I've Peyton here.
I can kind of make the opposite arguments.
I think you can make both arguments. I think we have to wait on
Yeah,
this
I don't
one.
know. It's tricky.
I think we have
Like,
to wait.
isn't there this thing that teams do where they're like, right when they're trying to trade a guy, they just run him into the ground for like 2 straight weeks to try to increase his trade value? Like, am I making that up?
You don't need to do that for
Yeah,
Damian
but Dame, you
Lillard.
don't have to do
though.
that with Dame.
Yeah,
Like, you don't have to play Dame on the second night of a back-to-back to get his trade value up.
yeah.
You know,
He played 40 minutes last night, and he's been amazing for the last like 7 years or something.
Fair.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that could be true for certain guys. Like Miles Turner could be a guy like that, but not for Lillard.
Right.
Because you don't need to prove his health. That's not really the concern here. I think here we have to wait though. But I do think Gary Payton will probably get downgraded at some point today. Because
Right.
he played 17 minutes last night. He's been dealing with injuries for so long, his entire career, and playing him on a back-to-back seems like the wrong move for them. So this current line is only the fair line, basically, if Peyton is out. But if we get Peyton
Got it.
and Lillard out, we have a lot of Spurs value. So in this context, because we're on the fringe of like the blowout margin, and because it's a tired version of Lillard on a back-to-back, he's only worth like 3.5 to 4 points instead of his normal 5 or 5.5. But still, if we get both these guys out, we'll have a projection of like 4.5 or 5.
got it.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Um,
Blazers
can we-
PR is the thing to have ready today. The Blazers
Right.
PR Twitter account. Yeah. Push
Okay.
notifications
We
from
jumped
them.
to that
For sure.
Atlanta game. It looks like we might have value right now. Is that a recommended bet?
Yeah, so the Blazers game is potential value. It could be on either side actually, because Portland, if everyone's in, is a bet, and the Spurs, if there's a lot of rest, could be a bet. We'll come back to Minnesota in a second because that's just Gobert again. But yeah, Atlanta is the plus 1.5 is just going to show up on our sheet sometimes. That's a minus 115. So it's not quite as good as it looks. And then this is also a game where we're crossing a 0, like +1 to -1. Like essentially, this is a game where you're getting minus 105 on the money line, and we're projecting Atlanta to win by 1.4 points. It's a pretty small edge. Because minus
Yeah,
105, you still need the win probability to be above 51 for it to be good. And our
Yeah.
win probability is like 52.
Okay.
So I think it's like a third of a unit bet, honestly. Like I think this is bettable but small. But if the Bulls move to 1.5 for real, like where you can get a plus money on the money line, then I'm waiting for now. I want to see if I can get a better number.
Got it.
So
Okay.
that is right on the fringe though of like it's plus EV, but it's very marginal. And if the line changes, then we could get something. I also think we always have to keep an eye on Trae Young, at least right now. He has missed games with so many different ailments. There is one player actually. I think I missed this because Underdog didn't have it, which is going to be another reason not to bet this right away. I think Onyeka Okongwu is questionable now that I'm thinking about it. So I'll do this in real time so we can see how much he matters. Yeah. I'm glad you brought this one up because that actually it's going to be like another half a point, and that is sort of enough here because it's such a marginal bet anyway.
It's enough to take it out of betting territory.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Because Okongwu has a slightly negative player rating, but if he's out, they're playing guys who are worse than him, like Frank Kaminsky. So it's not
Or
ideal.
Frank.
Yeah. Or Derek Favors, who I think I don't know what Derek Favors' player rating is. I haven't looked at him. What is he on the team still?
I was going to say I forgot he was still in the league.
Yeah.
I feel like they might have cut him already. I don't know. It's a little bit worse if Okongwu is out because he's already the backup anyway. It's not really a big deal. But if we lose a half point off this projection, then it's like I don't even want to bet it anymore. So this one I'm just waiting. The only other thing we're looking at today, well, actually, it is two other things. Gobert is simple. If Gobert's in, we have a Minnesota bet. He hasn't played in a while, but he almost played last game. I do think he'll probably play, but I'm not confident enough to bet it now.
What does that mean? He almost played.
He
went
through
on the court and
he went through a full warm up,
Got it.
and then they rolled him out. Yeah, I think that qualifies as almost playing, right?
Yeah, no,
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to know the definition.
Yeah, that's what I mean by that. He was on the court pregame and went through a full warm up, and then they didn't play him.
Got it. All right. So that one's simple.
They certainly don't need Gobert to beat Houston, though.
Right, so they may just hold him out again.
That adds a small bit the other direction.
Yeah, I think it's like
All right, so
60.
we're only-
I think it's like 60-40 he plays, but yeah, I want to wait for that update.
Got it.
So
All right,
we'll
that one's simple. Gobert's
just
in.
the thing on Gobert too. One more thing, he will be a game time decision. I'm like 100% sure of that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
And so will Anthony
All right.
Edwards, but he's going to play. I'm not even listing him anymore. He is questionable too. I'm pretty sure. Forever.
Okay.
At a certain
right.
point, it's not questionable when you're
No.
questionable 10 games in a row and you've played them all.
He would have to have a new injury. Yeah, it would have to be for something different than
And I'm
what
pretty
he's.
sure he played 5 games in 7 nights, if I remember
And he
right.
was questionable
he was
for all
questionable
of
in
them.
all 5 of them,
Yeah.
and he played all 5 of them.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that should be enough to know. All right. You said there was 2 things. So one was Minnesota if Gobert plays. What was the second thing?
The last one for today is the potential rest for the Grizzlies.
Yep.
And if Memphis had won last night, I think Morant, Bane, and Jackson would all be out. Because that would have been like the effort to make a comeback like that and actually win. The combination of them playing the minutes because it wasn't a blowout anymore, and then having like the sigh of relief that we got the win, I think they would have just sat the whole team tonight. Going from Phoenix to Sacramento is a pretty tough back-to-back. But even with the loss, Memphis is in a place in the standings where they don't have to worry about missing the playoffs. Like, they're a game and a half back of Denver, but then they're another like 6 games ahead of the next team. So Memphis doesn't need to win for any real reason. So the fact that they lost last night, I don't think it's a huge deal. I think it would have helped if they won for their rest chances, but it's not a huge deal.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think it's normal rotation for Ja to only sit twice in a game, including playing the last 7 of the second quarter, all 12 minutes of the third quarter, and the first 3 minutes of the fourth quarter?
No,
Is
I
that
think
normal?
he played a little bit extra because they were coming back.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's directly related to they just were on that crazy run.
Yeah.
I think there's no way he plays all 12 minutes of the third quarter if it wasn't, they had the momentum going. So
37
strong.
minutes is a little bit above what he normally, I think he normally
played
plays.
22 straight minutes in this game. I don't know how many players are actually doing that in the league. It just surprised me to see.
Yeah,
that.
Luka does it sometimes too, where if the team needs him to stay in the game, there's 2 reasons Luka will do it. It'll be if the team is down and they're like, let's give him a shot to keep the comeback going, and then if we get down by more, we'll just take him out. Or if they're on the other side of the blowout, the other direction of like, let's let him extend the lead early in the fourth, and then we'll give him his break. And I think Morant, it was the same thing. It was like, we're down 18, but we were just down 30. Let's keep it going, and if we stay down 18 for a little bit longer, then we'll just pull him. So Morant played a little bit extra. Yeah, I think Morant he's not formally listed. This is just me speculating, but I think he's around 50-50 to play tonight.
Got it.
And
All
I think
so. What's the actual? If we see that gets the surprise, this is one of those. If he shows up as a surprise questionable, that's really highly likely he's out.
Yeah.
Right? Since he's on it. Okay.
But
So
the
if we see
unfortunate
him-
thing here is we don't have a lot of value if only he is out.
Okay.
Because right now we're showing like a 1-point edge on Memphis. And if Morant's out, we're going 2.5 points to Sacramento, which is like 3/4 of a unit, 1 unit bet, whatever. Morant does affect the total, so I would probably go like half unit Kings, maybe half unit Memphis team total under if we got that.
Got it.
Because Morant is direct, like his impact is mostly on offense. But the other interesting thing here is Desmond Bane also played 34 minutes last night. it was kind of the same treatment for him. And the Morant plus Bane outcome is very exciting because Tyus Jones might be the league's best backup point guard. He rates as I think his rating has actually gone up recently, but he's a 1.1. So if just Morant is out, at least half of those minutes, or maybe
we have shades of last year where the
Yeah.
Grizz are not as awful without Morant.
And
But
then
if-
John
if Bane's
Conchar also
out, it
rates-
gets a lot worse, right?
Yeah, because John Conchar also rates well. So basically, if Morant is out, all of those minutes are being taken by Tyus Jones and John Conchar, like the combination of the two, with maybe like 8 minutes for David Roddy or something, but the vast majority will be those two players. And Jones and Conchar both rate really well. They're a 1.1 and a 1.8. John Conchar is really good defensively. So if just Morant were out, it doesn't really move. Even though Morant has a 4.9 player rating, he's only worth 2.5 points. I think I was reading him at 3.5. I was looking at Lillard. We don't even really have a bet if it's just Morant, because he moves at 2.5 to where we'd have 1.5 on Sacramento. It's like
So
not even.
We need Morant and Bane.
Yeah,
be-
so Morant and Bane are only worth 4.5 combined if you just add the ratings together. But in reality, I think it's more like 6. This is like a very extreme compounding situation because if Morant's out, Jones and Conchar play more. If Bane's
Same
out,
position too, right?
they're the
Like,
same
so you
position.
have-
They're both
yeah.
backcourt players. So if Bane were out too, Jones and Conchar are already playing more. Now we're going to get like Jake LaRavia or Kennedy Chandler or David Roddy. And those are the guys where you see a huge, huge drop off relative to like Tyus Jones. So I think the thing to watch for is turn on the Grizzlies PR Twitter notifications. And if we get a downgrade for both Morant and Bane, then it's a really, really large edge on Sacramento. Like we'd have it projected Sacramento -4 or something.
Got it. All right, so that's definitely one. Low the likelihood of it happening, but if
Yeah.
it does, it's a big swing. So keep an eye out.
I don't
As
think Jaren
always-
Jackson will sit, just to mention him too, because he wasn't part of the comeback as much. He only played 23 minutes last night. So that's why I didn't list him here, but it is possible they could say just, we've lost 2 games in a row. Our team is tired. Let's just have a game where we give all the backups all the minutes. They could rest everybody. But I think
Okay.
Morant is the most likely by far. Bane is not by far, actually. I think Morant's the most likely and Bane is close. I'm going to take away that. Yeah. I think it's like
All right.
50-50 for Morant and maybe like almost 50-50 for Bane. So it's
Bane's
not that
rotation
I'm
was-
like,
or Jackson's rotation was a little weird yesterday. He played the entire third quarter and then sat the whole fourth quarter.
I think he got in foul trouble and then they were coming back without him, so they just kept him on the bench.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to say that's the first thing to check is when his fouls came because he's
Yep,
had trouble
yep,
staying on the
that's-
floor because of foul trouble.
Yep. And
All
Dylan
right,
Brooks,
so-
too, played lower minutes for foul trouble. He's not going to rest either.
Right.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
think it's
if-
really Morant and Bane, and if both guys are out, we have like a 2-unit bet on Sacramento.
Got it. All right. So some potential value. Keep an eye on Grizzlies PR. As always, keep an eye on the Preaching Sense Twitter account. Matt will try to keep us updated. Let us know what's actionable. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Anything else before we sign off, guys?
No, I think yeah.
Nothing on the 11:30 updates, unfortunately.
All right.
All right.
Sounds good. Good luck, us. We'll talk to you tomorrow. See you guys.